BNSF train number 1256 to Chicago Union Station is now arriving. Please step behind the yellow line. BNSF train number 1256 to Chicago Union Station is now arriving. Please step behind the yellow line.
มาแล้วที่นี่รถไฟมาถึงแล้วก็ใส่คำว่าดู DUE ดูมาแล้วจ้า
Doors closing. Washington and Wells is next. Doors closing. Clark and Lake is next. Doors open on the right at Clark and Lake. Transfer to green, blue, and brown line trains at Clark and Lake. This is Clark and Lake. Transfer to green, blue, and brown line trains at Clark and Lake. This is an orange line train to Midway. Doors closing. State and Lake is next. Doors open on the right at State and Lake. Transfer to red line trains at State and Lake. This is State and Lake. Transfer to red line trains at State and Lake. This is an orange line train to Midway. Doors closing. Washington Washington and Wabash is next. Doors open on the right at Washington and Wabash. Connect to Metra and South Shoreline Millennium Station at Washington and Wabash. 'This is Washington and Wabash.
เอาล่ะทุกคนตอนนี้เราก็นั่งรถไฟมาแล้วก็นั่งรถเขาเรียกว่ามันเรียกเหมือนกันเทรนคือมันคือรถไฟแบบเป็นรางรถไฟกับรถไฟฟ้าเหมือนซับเวย์แล้วที่เหลือก็ต้องเดินเอาทัวร์ตอนบ่ายโมงจะทันหรือไม่ทันก็เล่าต่อไปกลัวอะไรโหตึกทำไม่หอมมากนะเจ้าโอ้ยสวยไปหมดไม่ได้ซีเนมาติกเดี๋ยวเอาออกก่อนนี่อันนี้เลยครั้งที่แล้วที่มาญาติก็พามาดูอันนี้นะคะเห็นแล้วก็เหมือนรู้สึกว่าเหมือนข้าวโพดนะแต่เขาเรียกว่าฮันนี่โคมฉันเรียกว่าคอนล่ะเราข้ามถนนเลยชิคาโกทริบิวน์ดอกใครเขียวแล้วไม่ได้มัวอะไรไม่รู้นะคะรถชนตายยิ่งโกโก้อยู่มัวถ่ายคลิปเนี่ยมึงงอกแงกสรุปเลยป้ายทุกครั้งที่ขึ้นรถเฮียอะไรบางอย่างต้องเลยป้ายยกเว้นแบบป้ายสุดท้ายเลยเอาล่ะไปต่อดูมีคลื่นลมนะคะถ้าพ่อมาต้องชอบอันนี้มากๆแน่ๆเขาบอกว่าเรื่องหนึ่งที่ขึ้นชื่อมากๆของชิคาโกเนี่ยก็คือสถาปัตยกรรมนะคะเพื่อนก็เล่าให้ฟังสนุกมากแต่ว่าเพื่อนบอกว่าถ้าจะให้ดีไปทัวร์ดีกว่าแล้วมันก็จะมีทัวร์ที่แม่น้ำชิคาโกริเวอร์นะ Historic Boat Tour ตื่นเต้นถ้าซิตี้พาร์ทก็ของเจ้านี้เลย Shoreline Sightseeing เอาล่ะซื้อจะรอดไหมนี่ดูเลยรอบบ่ายโมงไป Thank you
So the blue sign down the stairs to the left.
Thank you
เ
He's gonna take a quick photo, okay?
Okay, hi. Okay. Thank you so much.
Swati crab. We got people from all over the place. Guys, my name is Jim, and I have this good pleasure of being your docent, your guide for this 60-minute architectural safari here in downtown Chicago. Now, personally, I've lived here most of my life, and I have had the pleasure of showing off my city like this for the past 10 seasons. And I absolutely love this job. You know why? Because I love Chicago. And I'm hoping by the time we're done that you all have fallen in love with Chicago a little bit yourself. There's one of our goals. Now to do this, influence people and shape culture. Second, we're going to talk about the evolution of architecture. And what we're going to see is that each generation takes its cultural values and expresses them in 3 dimensions. So we're going to be decoding these old buildings. They're going to tell us what was going on. And finally, full disclosure, I am a nerd for life, guys. I have an engineering degree that I'm not using, but I am still a nerd, so we're going to nerd out a little bit, and hopefully we got some nerds on board. Any nerds out there? Let's see. Oh, we got some. Hawaii. Good. Mostly we'll have a boatload of fun. Hey, guys, just a reminder, our captain asked if we can keep our side conversations to a minimum to not disrupt other folks and avoid blocking people with the camera shots and stuff. Wrigley Building. Now, this one's early 1920s. Spanish Revival is the name of the style, modeled after a cathedral in Sevilla, Spain. Now, our question on this smart tour quest, because you guys are wicked smart, our question is why? So why were they building buildings that look like European cathedrals and palaces here in Chicago in the early 1920s? Well, it's because the young United States didn't yet know what our own style of beauty was. We were still copying and pasting beauty from Europe. It wasn't until later we came into our own, found our own groove. Recommend the Wrigley Building. Next building is the spectacular Trump International Hotel and Tower. Now, this was the 2nd tallest building in Chicago. It's a high-end residence and hotel, and it's a pretty good example of one of the architectural styles that we're going to talk quite a bit about today, called contextualism. Look up there with me. See these 3 patio terraces? They're called setbacks. Well, they're not arbitrary heights because they are each at the height of a neighboring building. The first patio where the Trump sign is, same height of the roof of the white Wrigley building we just talked about. Second patio on the left, look across the river, same height of that white rocket ship-shaped building. And the third patio up on the right, same height of the black box on the other side. So what I'm saying, it's acknowledging its 3 neighbors' heights. Site-specific designs intentionally meant to flatter the context. Contextualism. Now, the architect of Trump Tower is one of Chicago's most famous and beloved architects. There's a guy named Adrian Smith, and we playfully call him the world's tallest architect. Comes in at the staggering height of 5 feet 7 inches. We call him that because he makes the tallest buildings in the world. Eyes up, cameras up. Over to the right, you'll see the twin iconic corncob towers of Marina City. These are pie-shaped apartments, each with their lobed balcony. Now, here's its story. In the mid-1960s, there was a Chicago architect. His name was Bertrand Goldberg, kind of the social scientist of his generation. He wanted people to live in the city center like they did in Europe where he studied, but there was no infrastructure for residential living downtown, so he had to build this self-sufficient, autonomous city within a city where you can live above your luxury yacht, live above your valet parked car, live above your own restaurants, office space, movie theater, hotel, everything you need, an introvert's dream world. Perfect for COVID. Over to the left is our Riverwalk. Now, this Riverwalk's just a few years old. It's been a game changer for Chicago's relationship to this river, bringing citizens down to the river as never before. In fact, you get citizens this close to the water, they get a lot more concerned about the water quality in the ecosystem, so it's good for the river as well. Over to the left, you see the bottom of this white granite building with the mirrored glass, following all the way up to the top as it comes into view, and you'll see what looks like a Greek temple up there. See it, name of the style, neoclassic. You take something classic like the Parthenon, remake it with new materials, clarifying key proportions, the classic 30-degree pitch of the roof up there. This particular building, designed by the late Ricardo Bofill from Catalan, Spain, Barcelona, one of the few international architects represented on the river. Most of you are from out of town. Here's some orienting vocabulary for you. The part of town to your left is called the Loop. You may have heard that term. Let me explain. In our subway system, the trains are called the L because many of them are elevated, and they literally make a loop in the core business district. So the city center is called the Loop, although people living in the Loop. You know, Chicago is located here because of this river. In the mid-1800s, this little Chicago River here was the waterway that connected the East Coast to the Mississippi River. That's back when things were shipped by barges and schooners. So lots of merchandise came through Chicago, and it's been a hub of commerce ever since. Planes, trains, semi-trailers, all coming through Chicago. In this called Art Deco, late 20s, here's what you'll see in an Art Deco building like the merchandise mart. It always has these deep inset dark windows with these soaring vertical racing stripes that draws your eye up. Stair steps, setbacks, polished, limestone, precision, repetitive patterns, and decorative metal on the outside of the building. Art Deco was made for a different generation. This is the late 1920s. That's the roaring 20s, the jazz age. Guys, that was a time of prosperity, luxury, airplane travel, sophistication. They wanted an architecture that expressed that financial optimism, and Art Deco was just that. Because again, each generation takes its cultural values, expresses them in three dimensions. We're decoding these old buildings. All right, eyes up, cameras up. As we come under the bridge, we're coming into what's called Wolf Point. And here is where you're going to see 360 degrees of amazing beauty. This is kind of the trophy case of Chicago's architecture. Everything you see around here is new within the last 5 or 6 years, except for this one to the sharp left. Now, this curved building may look contemporary, but this is from 1983. That's 40 years old. Excellent example of contextualism. The curve of that reflective glass building not only imitates the curve of the river, but it reflects and flatters the context. Contextualism. Nerd alert, guys. We're going to talk about this Y-shaped building in front of us. Looks like a bottle of wine upside down in the ground. Now, as you look at it, you're probably wondering, why is it built like a Y? And the answer is because it's trapped, it's pinched. The back 2/3 of that lot are occupied by active Amtrak Metra train lines, so you can't build back there. They go into the plaza. On the riverside, the city requires a 30-foot setback from the river for public access, so you can't build up there. You're really pinched. That's a 39-foot wide base. Now what you got here is, here's another train. What you got here is a very tall, very skinny, narrow-based office building in the Windy City. See the problem with that? Tall building, Windy City. Wait a minute, the issue is sway. Yes, the building's designed to bend, break the pattern. That sway actually makes people rush there. You got a little system. Some guy trying to stabilize it. How do you do that? Well, Chicago's pretty good at it. Well, it ends up, we're going to talk about works. Look at me for a second. When the building sways in one direction, The water in the tank simultaneously sloshes the opposite way, correcting for that movement like a big giant water shock absorber brings the building to rest faster. We'll talk about some other techniques. Remember, we just said that the city requires this 30-foot setback from the river for public access. Look how the Bank of America building dealt with that requirement. They vaulted the third floor with these giant tripod legs. And you'll see as we step into our time machine. And we say that because these next 5 buildings coming up on the right were built chronologically, sequentially. So we're going to be able to march right through time. We're going to decode these next 5 buildings, and they are going to tell us what was going on, okay? It's our 3-minute TED Talk is really what it is. The first one, Art Deco, 1929, streamlined verticality, roaring 20s, until the 20s stopped roaring. Remember your history, what happened to the U.S. economy in 1929? Hawaii knows the stock market crashed. The country goes into the Great Depression, followed by World War II. Guys, you know that because of the Depression and the war, there was very little demand for new office buildings around the country between about 1930 and about 1957. That's a whole generation. Look up to the right. See the black box? When they reboot architecture in the late 50s, they reboot it all the way down to its essential core, a box. They leap into the modern age, and this is what they get. It's called black box modernism. Now, what they're going for is this elegant simplicity of a classy black box. These buildings are beautiful in their functionality. Now, our question, remember, is why? So, why were they building cheap boxes in the 50s and 60s? Well, think about it, because this generation that built these were Depression kids. They grew up in poverty, were naturally thrifty, conservative, tacaño, codo with their money. Didn't want to waste it on ornamentation, which they didn't. And they were busy building the infrastructure of our country. They didn't have time to sit around and argue about how many gargoyles they're going to put on our office towers, guys. They were just pumping them out. So, what do you need? An office building? You need it quick? You want it cheap? Well, let's see. Now offices are square boxes. You bunch them together, it's a big square box. Hey, look, here's a big square box of boxes. Take a quick read of that. 50s and 60s, cold boxes. The next one, the white one, 1970s. International style, generic, universal building. You might have one of these in your hometown from the 70s. But the curved one, behind it, 1980s. They were out of the box in the 80s. No more square thinking. They wanted buildings that curve in the river curve. Buildings with reflective glass to teach society to get along in a changing world and context. Contextualism was born. All right, so here's this evolution we promised. It went like this. From beautiful European cathedral-looking buildings like the Wrigley in the early 20s, to striped Art Deco in the optimistic late 20s, to conservative black boxes in the 50s, white boxes in the 70s, contextualism in the 80s, high-tech contemporary stuff these days, and that is the end of our TED Talk. Cool, isn't it? See that animation? Over on the right, look at the architectural irony. There is a fitness center and a bakery keeping each other in business. Supply and demand, carbs and cardio. All right, guys, we'll talk about these buildings on the way back. We're going to shift gears now, and we are going to 71, 152 years ago, October 8th, Sunday night, 9 p.m., a fire breaks out in Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's barn, a few blocks to your right. No one knows how. The problem was the wind. Guys, there was a 30-mile-an-hour storm wind from the southwest, which creates this firestorm of horizontal flames that literally jumped across the river twice. People running for their lives as the fire chased them. Wooden buildings falling like dominoes in flames behind them, while the fire raged for 3 days. And by the time it was done, had burned down more than 17,000 buildings. That's a big number. Left more than 100,000 people, no home, no possessions. Killed 300 people, could have been much worse, and burned out 3.5 square miles of the city's center. Those are the tragic facts. Now, the fiction is a lot more playful than that. It comes in with how did the fire start? And in the end, nobody really knows. Okay, that's one of their myths and legends. We do know a few things. One, we know that Eve started in Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's barn. Two, we know she was an Irish Catholic immigrant. Three, we know she owned a cow. And four, we know that the city was angry. The city was looking to blame somebody, looking for a scapegoat. And of all people, they blamed her cow. Of all people, they said Mrs. Catherine O'Leary's cow intentionally and maliciously kicked the fire. Personally, I don't think it's true because I've known plenty of Irish cows. They wouldn't do that, would they? I think the cow was framed. I think it was a setup. I think the city just needed a scapegoat. Cow. I think it was a cowspiracy. I think it's utterly unjust. Ooh, stay with me. The city had a beef with Mrs. O'Leary, and she pretty much had to hoof it out of town. This is what I heard. Now, holy cow, or cowabunga, I know there was a lot at stake, but I think it's time Chicago stopped milking this cheesy story and stopped crying over spilled lanterns and move on. That's the end of the tale. Come on, give it up. Hashtag dad jokes rule. The fire was the worst thing, and some people think it was one of the best things to happen to Chicago. The first city of Chicago burnt down. So here's that's our first story, guys. It's a story of destruction, but there's hope, because here's the second story. 22 short years after the fire had destroyed the city. Looks like a chess piece of a queen. Let's start there. When that building debuted in 1990, those barrels were illuminated at night with 1,800 fluorescent tubes. They're mostly LED these days, but the point is, it was so bright. Migrating birds thought it was the moon and got disoriented on their flight path. So they now turn those lights down in the bird migration season, spring and fall. Kind of cool. And then the king, you ready for it? Tall, dark, and handsome, king of the hill, star of the show. It's the Willis Tower. Unless you're from Chicagoland, you might still be calling it the Sears Tower. 1974, Sears department store, which remember was the Amazon of the day. Sears builds 54 years, which is a really long time to keep that title. Now the name, Sears department store, left the building in the 1990s. That was pretty sad, guys. It was a big employer here. And though they're good people, it's just that many Chicagoans are stubborn, nostalgic, lazy, and still call it the Sears Tower. So you're going to hear it go both ways. The Sears Tower is the Willis Tower. Or the Sears Tower, as it calls. Here's something fun for you. Guys, you know that two people have successfully scaled, free climbed the outside of the Sears Willis Tower, bottom to top, with no ropes and with no permission. The first one was an American climber named Dan Goodwin did it. They called him Spider Dan because he was wearing a Spider-Man outfit. Which is pretty cool, right? Second one to do it was a Frenchman named Alain Robert. They called him the French Spider-Man. He did it faster. 20 minutes. Both of them made it successfully. Both of them were arrested successfully. He's going to do that. Which didn't stop Alain Robert, because he went on to climb all of the tallest buildings in the world, including the current tallest building in the world, which is the Burj Khalifa. It's in Dubai. Now, besides being gloriously beautiful, my wife and I are saving to go visit there this spring. Burj Khalifa is 2,000. Most Chicagoans would suggest Sears Willis Tower by day with the sky deck and the ledge, and Hancock Tower by night with 360 and the tilt. which I thought was pretty cool.
อ๋อ
You know, then
ตึกนี้นี่เอง
Chicago has a lot of nicknames, right? The second city, you know, one of the reasons, the first one burnt out. The Windy City, actually two reasons for this one. One, yeah, the third coast, the city of neighborhoods, and from the Robert Johnson song made famous by the Blues Brothers, Sweet Home, Chicago. But the name Chicago actually comes from the Potawatomi Native American term describing the smell of the plants in this location when it was first being settled, Chicago, which means stinky onion. So yeah, New York's the Big Apple, but Chicago's the big stinky onion. Which are called the city that works. Now, this moniker is playing on the idea that it's both a working class, gritty, union, blue-collar town, which it is, a city that works. It's got a pretty good public transportation system. It's a big sports town. Dish pizza, Chicago-style hot dogs, and Italian beef sandwiches. Now, there's popcorn and other stuff, and let's start there. The Italian or Chicago-style deep dish pizza, everyone's got their fave. They're all very good. My wife and I like Lou Malnati's. They got a good sausage, pepperoni, butter crust. There's one in the Wrigley building. So there's also a place called Portillo's. 15-minute walk from where we get off the boat. They got really good Chicago-style hot dogs and Italian beef sandwiches. Let me explain each one. Chicago-style hot dog. As you want yours with everything on it. Now they call that drugged through the garden because it comes out with pickles, peppers, relish, tomatoes, onions, mustard, everything except
Ketchup.
ketchup. It's a Chicago thing. You just don't put ketchup on a Chicago hot dog. It's a misdemeanor crime. You're getting out in jail. They're trying to make fun of you, right? Then Italian beef sandwiches. This is my favorite. Let me explain. Thinly sliced roast beef cooked in its own seasoned juice. You take a hunk of beef, you put it in a French roll. You take the French roll, you dunk it back into the juice, you put some giardiniera peppers on it, or sweet peppers. Hard to eat. Very, very tasty. Portillo's got a good one. The bridges. Yes, these bridges open and close about 50 times a year, mostly for the sailboats as they process out to the lake in the spring and back in the fall. They work like giant teeter-totters. There's a huge counterweight buried on the back side. And so they open like this, open in the middle. Nerd alert. This is kind of nerdy, but you may find cool. Do you know that these bridges are made of steel? And you know that steel expands and contracts a little bit with temperature. That means the gap in the bridges is changing with temperature. The colder it is, the metal shrinks, the gap gets a little bigger. The hotter it is, the metal expands. What happens if it gets too hot? Like it did a couple of summers ago. Michigan Avenue Bridge expanded and was pinching itself shut. See the merchandise mart we talked about in Art Deco? Did you know in 1930 this was the largest, not the tallest, the largest building in the world? How big? 25 floors, 43 elevators, 96 acres of floor space. That's 73 football fields of office space. 7.5 miles of hallway. Had its own zip code. 2 city blocks. It's a big building. Mostly tech offices these days. Motorola's headquarters in there. And in the summer, they are lighting it up at night. Now, this is done for the year, but as we come under the bridge over the... Now, behind this dark glass is an $8 million, very sophisticated projector system that every night in the summer projects digital animated art, local artists, and projects it across the river onto the entire front face of that merchandise mart. The whole thing's covered. It's called Art on the Mart. Largest permanent art display in the world. That's a 2.5-acre screen. Ginormous. It's pretty cool to see. Gotta come back in the summer. Now, nerd alert. Look to the right. You'll see the glass box. And do you know that they programmed, there it is, they programmed those 34 projectors to shine onto the entire facade of the building except for all of the windows. They calibrated with lasers to mask and not shut in the windows and bother people that are working like that. Over the right, see these stainless steel posts at the base of which in the summer are these floating gardens. They're actually called fish hotels. The idea, the roots of these water plants grow down underneath there, creating a mini habitat so that some of the native species of fish can repopulate the river by having a place to spawn. You know, 1970s, they say there were about 10 species of fish in the river. Now there's over 70. So the river's coming back to life because that's what happens when you give it so long. All right, guys, without blocking views, eyes up, cameras up, just because we're coming into a beautiful section of Chicago. The buildings, the bridges, the river, the sky. I want you to open up your soul and let the beauty sink in and stir your blood. Next, we're crossing LaSalle Street. Did you know in 1930, according to the Burnham Plan of 1909, they needed to widen LaSalle Street, turn it into a boulevard, which it is. The problem they had was this. Red brick grocery warehouse building on the left was in the way. So what did they do? Kind of clever, a little sneaky. They just sacrificially chopped off the entire leftmost section of this building, leaving it imbalanced. Look carefully with me and count as we float past, because there are 5 bays of windows to the left of the clock tower, but count them, 6 bays of windows to the right of the clock tower. You can hardly tell it's lopsided because they cleaned up the brick facade on the left to mirror the other side and kind of cover up the crime, but you know the truth. Over to the right. All right, guys, see this short, squat little building, number 55? Why don't we call it the Danny DeVito building, stuck between 2 supermodels? You see why? Short-lived architectural style from the late 60s. You'll have seen this on campuses, government buildings, prisons, morally sturdy institutions. The name of the style is brutalism. The brutalism. It's got this rough, exposed aggregate concrete, deep inset dark windows, heavy materials. Looks like a fortress. And it is sort of hunkered and bunkered against the tumultuous time in U.S. history, the late 60s, brutalism. Look up here. Can you see our champagne bottle? Straight ahead, skinny green Art Deco building, real 24-karat gold foil with the carbide and carbon building. It's on Michigan Avenue, beautiful building. Looks like a champagne bottle. You know, you guys are well-traveled. You're from all over the place. Many people have said to me over the years that Chicago just has a way different feel than East Coast cities. They revived in New York, Boston, Philly. I love those cities. I lived in Boston for a while, but there is a difference. I've thought about it. I got my pet theory, and I think this difference has something to do with our different use of space. Look at the space around the buildings. The buildings can breathe. There's room. Here's my theory. East Coast cities tend to crowd their buildings, which has a psychological and a cultural effect. Chicago makes room, which has a psychological and a cultural effect. Let's explore, form your own opinions. I'm going to give you a couple examples. Right in front of us, as we come under the bridge, you're going to see the only 4 tall towers on the river that are built right up next to each other, abut each other. I want you to watch these 4 buildings and simply pay attention to how they make you feel. Now, imagine yourself in this East Coast canyon of skyscrapers. How's that feel? Well, it's a little loud and busy, crowded, congested, intense, overwhelming, kind of in your face. You feel that East Coast high-energy vibe. Now, East Coast city planners choose to build like this because they need to sell every square inch of very expensive property. So you can do that. If you do that, though, you sell everything and put billboards and neon and sell your sidewalks to vendors, this is what you end up with, is this loud, crowded, busy, overwhelming feel. And register that feeling and compare it to this. Look straight out here. Look at the space around these buildings. These buildings can breathe. You can breathe. See, I think this personal space around the buildings in Chicago makes a huge psychological and a cultural difference. Would you say Chicagoans themselves maybe a little more laid back, not so intense, not so much in a hurry as our friends on the East Coast. I think that space has a calming effect on us. You know, architecture matters. Architecture is the use of space. That's what we're talking about. So form your opinion on how a city feels. Over to the left, across the street from the white Wrigley building, you'll see the Chicago Tribune Tower. Now this one's called French Gothic Revival. Name of that style because it's modeled after a cathedral in Normandy, France. Now remember we said in the early 1920s they were still importing European style cathedral beauty. The Wrigley building modeled after a Spanish cathedral. Trib Tower modeled after a French cathedral. Then about 8 years ago into our neighborhood of cathedrals we get a temple of technology, and it's the Apple Store. It's right here. It's a glass box. It's high-tech in and out because that glass is structural, helping hold up that carbon fiber roof. See how the roof looks like an iPad or MacBook Air floating up there? Isn't that kind of fun? You know, people are having trouble finding the Apple Store standing next to it in the plaza. Our next building, guys, is the Hancock Tower. Now, it's the 5th tallest in the city. You're going to see a quick glimpse of it in between the two buildings on the left. It's a half a mile to the north. And you'll recognize it because it's a black trapezoid, wider at the bottom, narrower at the top. It's got the two big white antennae. Here it is coming up. Now, you can go up to their sky deck called 360. You got the glass tilt. Here it's, I've been up there. It's pretty cool. I've actually never done the tilt.
Oh, okay.
So
The 360, the John Hancock building that we were in.
Right, guys, you don't want to miss this one. See the James Hardy black box right here? Boring. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the one in the second row behind it. It's obscure, but in a second it's going to come into view. You're going to see a really cool building. It's got these white horizontal curvy fins sticking out. See it right now? It's not the Hourglass building. It's over here, second row, and it's called Aqua Tower. High-end residence and hotel. Each unit has its own unique balcony, which together makes the building look like waves of cascading water. See that? This is designed by a Chicago native star architect named Jeannie Gang. She is a Chicagoland native. She's a Harvard grad, makes her wicked smile. And she is a genius, literally a genius. She won a MacArthur Genius Grant. She's actually a card-carrying genius. And she's been busy. Look up to the right. You see her latest masterpiece. This blue hourglass-shaped stair-stepped building. This is hers as well. It's called the St. Regis. It's a high-end residence and hotel. I think the cheapest room's like $700 a night. I call it the Dr. Seuss building. See how it's swerving and dancing in and out, right and left? Now this is the 3rd tallest building in Chicago, but this is the tallest building in the world that's been designed by women-led architecture firm Jeannie Gang, crushing it, breaking the glass ceiling, role model for many. Here's some numbers for you. Chicago, 2.7 million people in the city of Chicago, about 9.5 million in the metro area. That makes Chicago comfortably 3rd largest city in the country, behind New York and Los Angeles. Now, Chicago is a city on the lake. Here we have a DuSable Lakeshore Drive, named after an important guy named Jean-Baptiste Pont DuSable, who's considered the father of Chicago. Now, he's the first non-native settler here in the 1780s, was an Afro-Caribbean Haitian fur trader. Him and his Native American wife actually had their trading post back there with the Apple Store. He's a pretty influential dude, a lot of stuff named after DuSable. Over to the left, as we come under the bridge, you're going to see Navy Pier. Now, Navy Pier was on the Burnham Plan of 1909. Now it's one of the biggest cultural attractions in the Midwest for Chicagoans and visitors alike. How do you get to Navy Pier? Easiest way, take our free water taxi. With your ticket, takes the taxi, it's about every half hour, it leaves, takes you right to the base of Navy Pier. What do you do when you're out there? I recommend the Ferris wheel. You get amazing views. Now, also a lake tour out there. It's pretty stunning. Speaking of good views, here's what's going to happen. Our Captain Curtis, who's awesome, is going to take us up here and do a slow U-turn. He's special because he holds sideways for you. Now, when he does that, you're going to have a nice little piece of some Chicago skyline. So, if you were thinking about snapping that group or family photo, good time for you to plan to do that. We ask, please just don't step on benches and chairs to take the photos. And if you're comfortable, we invite you to help each other with photos. Instead of watching every group of 7 struggle to take your selfie, why don't you take one of them and they'll take one of you and y'all pay it forward. You help each other. We call this our Chicago photo. That's how we roll. Last call to go to the bathroom in the bar. Here comes the taxi. It's right there, the blue dog. Last call to go to the bathroom in the bar. We're going to be coming into our dock in a little bit. We need to hurry off the boat. So we need that. Now's the time for that. I want to get off the mic, walk around, see if you got any questions. Maybe I can help with photos. And we'll get started again in just a little bit. So stand up, stretch your legs, guys. Look at what's behind you now.
สวยมากเลยทุกคน สวยมากสวยมาก
Up at the tall, skinny section. Remember that one? The big water tanks. When the building sways in one direction, the water in the tank simultaneously sloshes the other way to correct for the movement, bring it to rest. Second stabilizing technique, you got to use your imagination because it's kind of like the Sears Tower. But instead of bundling 9 columns together into a 3x3 grid, this one does it with 4 columns that are lined up straight. There's a little short one and the 3 tall staggered ones that are lined up, supporting each other, giving the building strength in this axial direction, which is usually the wind direction. Third stabilizing technique, even cooler. This is one you can see, you probably already noticed. Look up to the top. About 15 floors from the top, you'll see what looks like 2 floors that have no windows. And it's the 83rd and 84th floor of 101 floors, and it's called a blow-through floor. And just as it sounds, instead of windows in the residences, it's left open so that the wind can literally blow through the building and relieve the pressure on the windward side of the building. Now it does work, it's very clever, except it's very expensive because it costs developers millions. And just to put that in perspective, about 3 years ago, somebody bought the 71st and 72nd floor for a cool $20.5 million. So real estate's a little pricey there. Needless to say, I don't live there. All right, guys, last call to go to the bathroom. We're coming into our dock. Última llamada para visitar los servicios because we need to kind of hurry off the boat when we're done. Please don't wait till the very end. If you need the bathroom, now's the time for that. Otherwise, here's what we're going to ask. Big fave is for everybody else just to stay seated until we're all the way in and all the way tied up. And the reason is this big boat is going to tap against the wall in the last second. So for your safety, we're going to ask everyone just to stay seated. Now, here's what you can expect. As we get in there, We're going to wait till our captain says it's safe. Watch your step going up the ramp. I'm going to lead you up the steps, open the gate for you. When you get up there, you're going to see your boarding photos, which are very classy, professional photos with some really nice Chicago skylines. So take a look at those. Also, I'm going to be at the top of the stairs as you get off the boat. If you got anything else for me, be glad to receive any other questions that you might have. We always welcome your feedback, and we certainly appreciate your appreciation or gratuity. Only if you feel like you got more than your money's worth there. Here we go. We're going to finish the tour. This is the grand finale. This is my sermon, okay? We're going to finish the tour the way we began by talking one more time about my favorite subject, beauty. Here's my final question for you. Did you see a beautiful city today?
Yeah.
Okay, now remember, Daniel Burnham's City Beautiful Movement, World's Fair, 1893. They used to believe, and I still do, you might, that beautiful cities, that beauty itself has this inspiring, civilizing, dignifying effect on people. That beauty affects us, shapes culture, makes us better people. And I think it's true, and I hope that the beauty that you guys were all exposed to today here in Chicago, this Chicago beauty, did indeed inspire you. Inspire each of you guys today in this new year to, I don't know, maybe be that better person today. Make this that better world today. Maybe beauty is the way we'll achieve some of that kind of beauty. It's powerful. It has this way to lift the city's soul. Or as Burnham said, beauty has the magic to stir men's blood. I hope that your soul has been lifted, blood stirred by this extraordinary tour experience today. And on behalf of Shoreline Sightseeing, our Captain Curtis, this outstanding crew, my name is Jim, and I want to welcome you again to the greatest city in the world, Sweet Home Chicago. Thanks for coming, everybody. Happy New Year.
Woo!
Thank you all very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Jim.
Don't worry about this.
Don't worry about it. I'll be waiting for revenge. You guys enjoy that? So what do you think, huh?
Loving it.
What do you think, California? Thank you. Tommy. Love you guys for coming, guys.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire. We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals, they take us higher.